happened with Kamala in California.
Yeah.
But it was systematic. We passed two laws, one of them in 1986 and one of them in 1994. Both of them were written by Joe Biden. And the first one was the drug law, which was in the omnibus drug law. And that law did something extraordinary, which it gave penalties for crack cocaine that were 100 times longer than for powder cocaine. And it was because blacks were using crack cocaine and whites were using powder cocaine. So you could have somebody in Westchester County, a couple of miles from the Bronx, right on the border, a white kid who was arrested for powder cocaine and would get no prison sentence, and a black kid the same age arrested for crack cocaine in the Bronx, which was the preferred form of most available form, thanks again to the intelligence agency.
Yes, they brought it in.
Yeah, and the black kid would end up getting 10 years in jail.
Right.
And and then that was systematic. And then in 1994, we passed the omnibus.
And his kid's a crackhead. That's what's even more funny.
In 1994, that's a good point. In 1994, I think he's sober now, though. In 1994, they passed the Crime Act, which had the mandatory sentencing. It had 3 strikes you're out. You had the super predator provisions, and that was all designed to lock up the entire black population. And between those two bills, we doubled the amount of blacks in American prisons. So
Kamala let the big dirty secret slip. And I had this in my campaign when I ran in 2012 on a socialist platform, but she let the big secret slip. I said, part of my campaign was saying, they're locking up kids in their youth, mostly minority kids in their youth, and they're using them as prison labor. And the number one manufacturer of U.S. house paint is prison labor, where they're paid 21 cents an hour to create, for a corporation. They're corporate slaves in prison. And Kamala let that slip where she didn't let the guy out even though his term was over. And she goes, well, I need him for labor.
Well, what she actually did, and the point you're making is absolutely correct, but there was a case that went to the Supreme Court that said that the California prisons were illegally, unconstitutionally overcrowded.
Yes.
The Supreme Court ordered the state of California to release 5,000 prisoners who were imprisoned for nonviolent drug offenses.
Right.
They were mainly blacks.
Right.
And she repeatedly, again and again and again, defied that order. And when she was asked about it, she said, we need these for fire suppression. We need the prisoners. We need them for certain jobs, like you say,
slave labor.
For
she,
paint.
She comes from a slave-holding family in Jamaica, so it wasn't no big thing to her to use people for slave labor. And she probably owned a piece of the privatized prison herself. Most Democrats own privatized prison. Allegedly, like a lot of these Democrat senators and such, they're the things they're invested in, they should be investigated because they're getting double kickbacks, and so are the Republicans. I mean, the things that our Congress is invested in are questionable, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The conflicts of interest are outrageous. Just going back to that last point, when Tulsi ran against Kamala, and I love Tulsi.
I love her too.
Yeah, she's
we
fantastic.
Had her on. We love her. We had her on here. We love her.
I mean, she's so smart, so articulate. So, she has such integrity. And she said that she made this point when she was running against Kamala. She said Kamala, I'm sorry, was putting people in jail, massive numbers for marijuana. Mm-hmm. And when she was asked, had she smoked marijuana, she laughed and said, essentially said, yeah.
Do they just want us all dead? It just seems like they do. They just want to kill a ton of people in our country. They just want us dead.
Who's they?
The government.
Oh, yes.
What is your role in this?
I usually talk more, but I'm so fascinated. I'm just hanging back,
Yeah.
keeping it on track.
He tries to keep me on
He
the
keeps
map.
you on.
Yes.
I'm getting that part
But you're
now.
telling him he's not keeping me in line.
Is that what you're doing? Because I'll
I
step
think
up.
he is.
No, but I wouldn't speculate about that because I try never to make predictions, and I try never to speculate about why people do things. I just try to lay out the facts. And
Yeah,
like in the
well, you're
Fauci
smart.
book, I never look into his head and say, this is why he was doing it. I don't say, well, this is why Bill Gates is doing it. But as I said to you earlier, it's hard to figure out an innocent explanation for why this stuff is happening. Or, stuff like the border.
Yeah.
You go down to the border and you see so much evidence that they're letting, let 7 million people in, and that they literally took down the fences, and there were 27 gaps in the wall that they bought the material for, and they ordered it stopped. And then it's hard to say, well, what is the innocent explanation for this? Nobody thinks it's good to let the Sinaloa drug cartel to control our immigration policy in this country. How could anybody? This isn't a Republican or Democrat
No, it
issue. It's just obvious that this is a bad policy.
Oh, you see.